Welcome back to the Blackletter Podcast. We set out to create an entertaining and exciting podcast about law and business, and I think we've done it. Blackletter, the name, comes from the Gothic typeset that was originally used in the Gutenberg press. Over time, Blackletter became the only font that English law books were printed in. Everything else was printed in regular type. It made it harder for kind of the common person to understand what the English law books said. Blackletter came to represent something that was law, that was set in stone, that was sort of old and a well-settled fundamental principle of law. We're here to demystify Blackletter law. We're here to demystify things that happen in business and law and where those two meet. And I hope you have fun listening. Hi, this is Tom Dunlap for the Blackletter Podcast. And this is our 50th special edition, 50th episode recording. I'm saying hi to you from my home. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. Thank you for watching and listening, and for guests who've joined me on the Blackletter Podcast over the last 50 successful episodes. Our viewership and listenership has grown exponentially. And I hope that it grows more, and I hope we do more fun and exciting things. Enjoy the 50th episode. I think you'll find it fun. What we did is we took the top three that I do at the end of every show. We took all of those and we pressed them into one episode here. So you're going to be able to get the top 3 tips from professional football player, Hall of Fame football player, to professional marketing, Mo Bunnell, to musicians, to the CEO of a $1 billion company. We're going to get everybody's top 3 in business and law and what they need to know. So thanks again for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the show.
So I want to ask, Mo, what are the 3 things, if you could, we have to come up with the 3 things that we're about. What are the 3 things that lawyers or accountants or professionals should think about, in your view, from the snowball system or from whatever, the 3 most important things that you should take away from, if they sit through your entire course and they walk out and there's 3, they forget everything but 3 things. What are those things? Or 2 or 4 or whatever?
No, there's a lot of power in 3s. People believe things in 3s more and they remember in 3s. So you're onto it. There's a study called When 3 Charms But 4 Alarms. It's really awesome.
So the 3 things. We'll go with the 3.
I love it. That's what we've got. Well, and I'll say this with a sort of a preface in front of it. We've got a whole course that's free that's built around these 3 things I'm going to tell you. And it's at bdhabits.com. I know you know about it. But B for business, D for development, bdhabits.com. Anybody can sign up and they'll get a 6-part series of that, me talking through these 3 things with job aids, posters. I mean, it's really phenomenal.
I support you and I love it. And I've tried to make most of the lawyers in the firm watch it.
Yes.
I don't know if they're actually watching it. I don't know how many have signed up, but I've heard a lot of people have signed up,
Yeah.
So I love it. I promote it. So 3 things. Yep. What are they?
Yeah. So this is it. So I had to say that. So we've got a call to action, right? Hopefully people sign up at bdhabits.com. So the 3 things are, we need to get, as experts, we need to be really good at managing our opportunities, really good at managing our relationships, and really good at managing ourselves. So on the opportunity, in the free course, we go through the exact steps that human science tells us we need to go through to get a yes. And there's 5 major steps. So writing down our opportunities, whether it's speaking at a conference or starting work and bringing in the files and starting a matter, anywhere we need a person to say, yes, that's an opportunity. We need to write those down, get them out of our head, know which step we're on, and that tells us what action we can take next. The second piece, managing our relationships, is just really simple, writing down the 8 or 10 relationships that are most important to your future success. We've got 7 steps there that go from target all the way to the person's actively giving us referrals. They're a raving fan of sorts. And those 7 steps tell you when you write down your list of 8 or 10 folks, you know where you're at on those 7 steps, and you write down what's next to deepen our relationship, to be more helpful. That gets your top relationships out of your head. We have so many clients stick that on their wall, look at those relationships all the time. And these are the people that they want to invest in. Okay. And then the third piece is managing ourselves. And that's super simple. It's just taking 15 minutes once a week, same time every week. Habits are important to be at the same time all the time. Same time every week. I do it at 4:00 on Fridays. And that's to take a look at the opportunities, take a look at the relationships, make any updates, figure out what the next step is, and then pick the 3 most important things we can do that week to move either an opportunity or relationship forward. And you just do 3 things that next week. If you want to do 20, great, but do these 3 first. We call those most important things, or MIT. So I know we got to close out, but manage your opportunities, manage your relationships, and most importantly, manage yourself. And if you do that, 3 things a week, 150 or so a year of your highest big impact items, and business will start coming in.
So it's really the MORE system, managing opportunities, relationship, and selves, MORS.
Oh, wow. I like it.
Have that. That's yours.
I love it.
No.
We're gonna add Moore's value. I don't know. There's something really good here.
For independent film production, from a legal business perspective, the 3 things that you can't screw up. And I'm using like G-rated words today, but you know what I'm saying. In the film industry, we might use an F-bomb for that. But what are the 3 things you can't screw up? Absolutely, that are important. From, between the 2 of you, what do you think comes out on top?
I want to hang to the scenario you gave me of a potential true life story type of scenario when someone gets involved. The reason I asked earlier on, why did she give up final cut rights, is because the final cut rights have to be given to the distributor. They're going to require them,
right,
or it's dead. Project is dead.
So that's a good one. So final cut rights, no matter what the project is, you have to reserve them to the production studio that owns the rights. I mean, maybe bundle that. I don't know. And you guys tell me what you think, but number one thing is own all of the rights.
Own all
to
the rights,
everything. Sure. Copyrights, cut rights. Something that came up at my panel last year were screen credits. Like, make sure you've pre-negotiated those. Apparently one of these films that ended up at Sundance last year, that one of the producers was like, yeah, and we had a huge fight over who got to be a screen credit by themselves and who had to share single cards. Right. It was a huge deal, and apparently it delayed distribution of the film because the fairly famous actors actually that we're talking about that were in this film, ones that I've heard of, which means they must be sort of famous. Yeah. I know no one. But that held up the whole thing. So I think make sure every I is dotted and T is crossed with respect to rights. And then a rights Bible. That's the other thing I've run into, right? Where in the background, like there's a Hertz sign or something. And,
right.
Somebody's getting stabbed in front of it or something. You kind of have to work out those things. So own all of the rights and clear all of your IP. Is that one big bundly thing?
I would say,
is that too bundly?
It's 1A and 1B. If you're going to bundle them.
All right. So that's 1 and 2 maybe. So 1 is own all of the rights. And then what's 2? Own all of the final cut rights and copyrights. What's 2?
Sure.
Clearance?
Well, clearance is certainly, yeah, because, you were talking about earlier, own all the rights. When I was in-house counsel at National Geographic, I was director of business and legal affairs there. One of the things, it's well known that.
But lemurs always give you releases.
Lemurs,
right?
Lemurs
always give you releases.
Only the lemurs. No, those are the easy ones. The contracts say.
That's where it is.
I'm just kidding.
You will
they're in China.
You will deliver to us a project that has nothing but wholly owned rights, right? Well, inevitably the producer is going to stick in some acquired footage or some acquired music instead of original music or original footage.
Yep.
And so there's a whole clearance process for that. But yes, clearances, and if you have a movie and you want to distribute the movie in perpetuity and you enter into a distribution contract for the distribution of that movie in perpetuity, but your acquired footage rights or your acquired music rights only have a 10-year license, then that can mess things up. So you also have to have the rights tracking.
Okay. So maybe that's, so 1A is own all of the rights. 1B, what'd you say 1? 1 is own all of the rights. 2 is clear all of the rights and have them match up. So what's 3? What's our big third, Mikhail? We'll call on you. What's the most important thing you've produced other films. You're an attorney. What do you think is the third most important thing to do as a producer, not from a creative perspective, but from here's the thing you can't screw up?
Yeah, I would say it kind of feeds into what you guys have said already, but as a general thing for people, I'm saying this because most people who do this obviously aren't attorneys and don't have a background in it,
right, sure,
is just make sure every piece of paperwork from the absolute beginning is completely tied up and totally nailed down, and you've got it totally sorted. It's a broad one. I know I'm cheating a little bit by encompassing everything, but
make sure you do everything right.
Make sure everything right. But I can't overstate enough and people don't appreciate it. And it comes down, as you said, I was actually going to pick up a little bit on clearances, but as part of it, scoring really important. Any songs you use, really important. As you say, any background that you've got in there, any extras, anyone that happens to be walking past, anyone that happens to go and do it.
I have a story. I had a client, a band in DC was my client, and this huge Hollywood production film's trailer comes out on TV. It's like on TV and at the end of films, and you'll know the film. I don't know if I can say it because we settled. But one of the band members watched the trailer, and it was their song. And they had an agent who was an unlicensed, not really an agent, who had sold the rights to their music to this company without the band's permission and paid them nothing on it. And it was like big enough that it would, $10,000, $20,000 sale for trailer credit, right? And they found out because they saw it on TV. So when you say own all of the rights, that studio is actually in trouble because the agent didn't have the right to do that, and they didn't check with the copyright holders, and the agent did not. So sort of interesting, but that was a big studio that messed that up. We've shut down film productions for Sony for a sweater.
Oh, wow.
For a Christmas sweater.
Right.
And Sony was like, the production company said they had the rights. They just pointed the finger, and then we went to that production company, and they didn't. But anyway,
Hangover 2 got in trouble as a movie. I think it's on the public domain. The Hangover 1, I think, got in trouble because there was Mike Tyson shows up in The Hangover as a cameo.
Yes, that's right.
And his tattoo.
That was a big case. Yeah, they didn't have the rights to his tattoo, the tattoo artist.
Yeah.
And let's say, and it doesn't really matter. I'm going to emphasize, it doesn't really matter if the litigant, the plaintiff that brings the cases like that wins or loses. The fact is that they've interrupted something, and it's costing a lot of people money. And so clear that out. It's not a matter really sometimes of winning or losing.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you're in litigation at all.
And I'll tell you guys what movie the sweater one was when we're not on camera, but you'll be kind of surprised.
Yeah.
Same with the music ones. Just interesting what rights that even huge studios screw up. So I guess really yours, and I think I agree. I always tell people, you can't go backwards and get this stuff done. You can't finish production, go to distribution, say, oh, right, we need to get the copyright on that. We need to get the music clearance on that after it's done. You have to get it before you put it in.
Yeah, that's not good form. You don't want to do that.
So I guess early on.
Tom, just to reiterate now, let's go through the 1 through 3 to make sure we have these rights worked out. All right. The 3 takeaways. 1, clear all the rights. Make sure your rights are cleared, right?
Okay.
2, own all rights. And 3,
get all the paperwork in order right at the beginning and keep it in order.
But
I know it sounds obvious.
Much more exciting than that.
I don't know.
1, 2, 3. Well, I want some exciting points.
I don't know. The third of a trilogy is always a bit of a flop, isn't it? It's tricky.
No, it depends.
I do that one.
We could make it more exciting.
Yeah.
No, I mean, look.
Dot your I's and cross your T's.
Yeah,
or dot your T's and cross your I's. I mean, just do both.
I mean, look, what I could say is if you want to do something divergent from that, and if you want to say something separate, which is a bit more specific, I would say make sure that you have all of your performers aligned exactly contractually from the beginning and at the end. Because when you're shooting, and again, this always happens, you always shoot and stuff goes wrong and there's a bit of a delay or there's an issue or someone shows up and they don't behave the way you thought they were going to behave or you had something like that. And the actors will turn up, and people who make any kind of film or theater or anything like that will know that it's not everyone shows up for a month beforehand, hangs out, all get on really well, and then you do it. People will turn up 3/4 of the way through.
Absolutely.
They'll be there for 2 days and they'll be in. And when you do a short film or an indie film, sometimes they're there for a day and they come in and we need them we have 4 hours to actually get stuff with them, and you do it. And if things aren't aligned and it's not tied up and it does that and you lose that time, then you lose that shot. And
when you say things like that to me, in the back of my mind, I'm going, okay, actors on set 2 days. That means you had a letter of intent earlier, and the letter of intent doesn't suffice. You have to have an actual agreement in place. And the investor won't put money in until there's a letter of intent in place. It has to be binding. The actor doesn't want to sign a binding contract unless you have money in escrow. I mean, there's a
catch-22.
There's a whole litany of things behind these statements that you're making. The huge leverage involved, and it's a complex business. But you know what? It can be overdone. It's overdone. It's overcome every day. Independent filmmakers are great, usually very savvy people, but they need good support as well.
Yeah, no, you do. And I go, not to over-promote the law firm, but I would say, and I always say this, in every business endeavor, anyone that's doing, any of my friends, I'm always like, you can do a certain amount by yourself, you can research things, you can get friends and stuff.
Yeah.
But it comes to a point where you need to actually just stump up and pay it. And fees for people like lawyers or other consultants that are giving that advice is worth it in the long run.
So if I'm a candidate and I'm watching the Blackletter podcast and whether you're a Democrat or Republican or Libertarian, just generally as a candidate, what are the 3, if we could boil these 30 or 40 things we talked about, what are the three major things as a candidate that I should take away from the show?
You got to be able to raise money.
Raise money.
You got to have a good, authentic message. And you got to have the right people working for you.
So money, people, and message.
That's right.
Those
Absolutely.
are the three takeaways today. And I think you've covered everything that I wanted to know. I know more now than I did certainly an hour ago about campaigns and finance, and gosh, just learned a lot. So John, three big takeaways again are you've got to have the right people, you've got to have the right message, and you've got to be able to raise money.
That's right.
All right. So you heard that. John Whitbeck, former Republican Party chair, Republican Party of Virginia chair, and Republican National Committee member. Is that what it was?
Absolutely.
That's right. And candidate for office. And now the CEO, the principal of Strat Poly, political consulting firm. Three big takeaways then for if I'm a corporate counsel managing immigration for my company, or if I'm a foreign company looking to bring people in. What are the three simple major things about immigration? The first one I think I have is the U.S. is trying to keep you out.
Yeah.
Just start with that presumption.
Absolutely.
And work from there. So that's the first big takeaway. What would be takeaway number two?
Takeaway, business planning / paperwork. Make sure that all your paperwork is in order. If you've had any communication whatsoever with USCIS, please share with your attorney, because that's going to dictate the strategy.
Gotcha.
That could limit you in some ways. That could provide numerous opportunities for you in ways, but you've got to keep a hold.
So second takeaway is strategic.
You
have to be strategic. So first, the U.S. is trying to keep you out. Second, you have to be extremely strategic with immigration.
Yeah,
so that means paperwork, planning, talking to an immigration attorney before you launch yourself at USCIS,
yes.
Right? And then, so what's our third big takeaway?
Well,
what's the best things you can just remember?
The most important thing for me when I get with a client, one of the things is my human rights background has allowed me to really enter client relationships as this, on a more personal level. These aren't just clients and, file numbers. These are real people. And that's what I grew up with. And what I say to them is, whether it's me or another attorney that you trust, please share everything.
So it's very personal.
It's very personal.
Immigration is only successful if you're personal and able to share with your attorney.
Little things mean a lot in immigration. If you've had an arrest record, if you have children, if you've been in the United States before, if you've been in the United States out of status before, all these little things can mean a whole different strategy. But you can deal with it if you know about it. You know about it.
Okay.
You know what? Because today, 2 years ago, if you submitted a petition, any petition, you got a receipt in 7 days. Last year, it was 14 days. This year, it's over 60.
Wow.
So
the process is slow.
There are 8.9 million petitions sent in every year. There are 16,000 employees in USCIS, which means that's about 450 petitions for every employee.
And not all of them are looking at it.
Look at the petitions, and not all of them, that's on a 365 day year.
And this isn't the most favorable administration for immigration.
No.
Let's just put it out there.
Absolutely.
It's not the easiest place. It's the best time to have a lawyer who spent 30 years doing this.
Absolutely.
Right.
So if if you find out something halfway through the process, it may mean starting over, and given the delays, you could turn a 2-year wait into a 4-year wait.
Gotcha. Which hurts everybody, the company, the person immigrating or non-immigrating.
Exactly.
So 3 big takeaways then. First, the U.S. is trying to keep you out. Be strategic. Make sure you communicate with your attorney. And third, disclose everything to your attorney, or it's going to get you, it's going to bite you in the end. Big question for you guys, and taking up a lot of your morning with mics and cameras and time. I appreciate all the time. But what are the 3 most important things? I guess I'll start with Royce. What are the 3 most important things as GC, as a general counsel, that you would say to either another general counsel or your outside counsel that they should know about you and how you operate as a general counsel?
Again, I guess I go back to just the focus on Solenis as a company and our focus on customers, and our sole purpose is to solve somebody's problems, and so our commercial team and the rest of the company are focused on solving customer problems that manifest in different ways, sometimes more directly or sometimes more indirectly than maybe somebody on the front lines like the commercial team. But the mindset has got to be the same at the level of support organizations like legal. And again, so we're partnering to help our internal customers and clients focus on solving problems for our external customers, and in the process, protecting our assets because we do have shareholders to whom we have a responsibility, and so that's important to us as well. But for me, it's make sure that the business strategy leads, whether it's IP or any other strategy. It's got to be the business strategy and not the other way around. And so It's just that simple.
So if I could summarize it, and then you can correct me, it sounds like the first thing, and probably good advice for any interface with a company as an outside counsel, is that you have to understand what the company's mission is. And then you as an outside counsel have to align with the company's mission before anything else. It's not solving a legal problem, it's solving the company's problem.
Yes. And in order to do that, you have to know the company and you need to know the people. And so connecting with the people in a very personal way and understanding our business challenges and our priorities for the year. We talk with our outside counsel about that so that they understand it, because we need them aligned with where we're going. And so I need a partner who understands that and is on board with that. And so that
understands what you make, who your customers are,
and where we're going tomorrow.
Yep.
Where we are today and where we're going tomorrow, what's important to us.
And so for right now, for you as GC, it's business case leads everything you do.
That's right. And it's up to us as a legal department and a legal function to make sure that outside counsel understands that as we're, solving issues and solving problems and helping to make money. Maybe even becoming a profit center, in terms of monetizing IP. But we haven't gotten into that. We probably don't have time for that. But
I can talk to you about it, though. We do some of that.
Okay.
We know how to do that very well. So, John, what about you? What, as the CEO and president of the company, and you travel a lot, 120 countries, and you have all this stuff going on. What's the most important thing that you would say to either your GC, who's right here, in terms of what they should think about as a GC generally, and you can make it more generic, or to somebody else who's in a position like yours? Like, what do you think you would say to them and say, well, this is what I think the most important thing is about running our company, the single most important thing or the two most important things?
Well, when I think about running the company, and I could talk about, how Royce and I maybe work together, but I think about running the company, I try to do two or three things. We really are trying to create the right culture here.
Right.
Because if you have the right culture, then, your employees are engaged. They're really helping you drive what you want to drive. So creating the right employee experience is important to us. So we've built a culture. We talk about it. It's about people, performance, and results.
Okay.
And we drive that culture through our employee survey. And we tell people, hey, look, you may be in 120 countries. We'd like to come have a sit-down session with you on a regular basis, but we can't do that. So use the employee survey to give us feedback. And then whether it's the legal team or the finance team, then they can take that feedback and go try to make your experience better. So working on the company culture is important to us. And then working conversely on the customer experience, right? How do we make sure our customer has the right experience from us every time? Okay, so I work on that a lot. Employee experience, customer experience. And then, what I try to do with our functions, whether it's legal or finance or HR, is align them to the business strategy, right? Because you really can't have a function that doesn't align.
Right.
And so we really work hard on alignment to make sure that, if we're going to spend $50 million a year on technology development, that our IP strategy is aligned to the business priorities, as an example.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So talk to me a little bit about how you two work together as a kind of the top of the company and dealing with legal and the business case. And obviously you understand the business case, but how do you guys work together?
I'll start with, what we have is we have an executive committee.
Okay.
So it really involves, we have two business presidents. We have Royce and we have the CFO and the leader of HR. And we meet on a monthly basis. And whether it's sometimes not so nice issues to have to deal with,
right,
or how we're going to invest and grow and where we're going to spend our money, and so we meet as a team once a month and talk about that. And that's kind of how we lead the company, is with an executive committee.
Okay. And what is that, a informal meetings? You guys
we're here in
conference
person.
room? So
yeah, we're here in person.
Okay.
Mostly.
With the
and it's formal. Yeah.
So a formal business meeting?
Yeah, and it's usually like a half a day, and we have a variety of topics. Like I said, sometimes they're good topics, sometimes they're not so good topics.
Right.
That we have to go deal with, and that's what we try to do. Is it gives you a perspective, right? Because everybody's got a perspective, and it usually allows you to end up with the right answer.
Excellent. Is there anything else you guys would like to say to the podcast listening audience that you'd like to share about your company, or anything that I've left off?
One of the things we're really focused on is, to grow a business, you have to think about, like, what's your strategy? Ours is to kind of think about these market trends.
Right.
So, things are happening fast. Like, you would not have thought, like, 3 years ago that sustainability was going to change the business environment, but it's going to. It already is. There now are funds that can only invest in sustainable companies. And so young people are changing the world in a much faster way than ever happened before, because of social media, because communication channels, because of all this stuff. So we're really focused on, how do we tell our sustainability story? And, we have two ways to address that. One is, are we a good corporate citizen? Do we do the right thing in the communities where we operate? And we do. The second thing would be, do we do the right thing with our facilities? Air emissions, water emissions, those kind of things. But most importantly, it's what we do for our customers, because these customers have big facilities that consume a huge amount of energy, water, resources, and our ability to help them change their CO2 footprint, drive a more sustainable solution, is really important to them. And they are selecting suppliers. Investment funds are selecting where they'll invest, all on this concept of sustainability, I think driven by young people. They actually read, the what's in a product, make their decisions on what they'll buy by what's in a product.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to have a really profound impact on business.
So that's one of your corporate core values, it sounds like, is that you're driving sustainability for your customers, because that's your customers' need.
Yes.
Is they need to be sustainable as well, because that's just how the world is trending. Fantastic.
Bruce, if you could say, just kind of as a closing thing, if you could tell somebody about to launch into a business like QuickFee, not necessarily, obviously, nobody hopefully will come along and swipe your business model away. It sounds like you're the 800-pound gorilla right now. But if you could give advice to an entrepreneur, what would be the couple things, 1, 2, 3 things you would say, think this, do this? I mean, you said curiosity. I assume that's top of your list. But if you're giving advice to somebody else.
So curiosity is like an attribute. If you're giving advice on what an entrepreneur should do at the time that they're starting out, number one,
right,
determine how much cash you think you need to start, and make sure you've got twice that amount of money, because it will cost more than you think and take longer than you think to achieve the success you try to achieve. Number two, get good advice from an attorney and a CPA. Find an attorney that you can get along with. Find a CPA that you can get along with. I think, Tom, most people listening, any attorney listening would know the most expensive thing you can buy is cheap advice. So I would say to any entrepreneur, get good advice at the start, pay good money for good advice from an attorney and from a CPA. And thirdly, be prepared to pivot. If something's not working, accept the brutal facts that it's not working and try something else. And keep changing your model, keep listening to the handful of early customers you've got until you've got something that has mass scale or mass scalability to get true success.
So I guess the 3 big takeaways I'm getting from everything you've said, George and Robert, is the first, I think, it's kind of like location. It's relationship. It seems like that in everything you said, partnering with your clients, partnering with the attorneys, making sure that you're kind of in lockstep with their goals, because you're going into a venture together. So biggest takeaway is that relationship drives all. And then the second takeaway is that it's important for a banker as a partner to, I guess, understand the marketplace and have the resources to be able to understand the marketplace and help the client. And then third takeaway that I'm getting from our conversation is that there are, I guess, other banks out there that might not focus on relationship, that might have slightly better rates. So I guess at the end of the day, you have to figure out what you value the most long term.
Right.
So is that right, or do you guys have what? Robert, you want to amend my third takeaway? Or amend my first?
I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's each individual person has to assess what's best for them and what's most important. There's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of, there are lenders, there are different places you can go. There's different sellers. And do I want to pay more to be in downtown Arlington than I do in Ashburn than I do in Purcellville because you're further away? Do I want to pay a higher rate to bank X, a lower rate, not worry about, the growth with it, cover that in? Each individual person has to assess what are the things important to them.
Can you help them do that? Can George and Robert, and I think you guys do that for clients?
Absolutely. And, just as I know Sandy Spring has a long thing of attorneys, and we work with a lot of banks, we work with borrowers. Part of it is getting that right fit. And that's where it's important. And to George's point where he said that, we want you to succeed.
Right.
If the underwriting and the relationship is right, the institutional knowledge is going to say, when you come in, I want to buy this building here. Can I borrow some money to do so? That might not work. That's not, we're running that through what we've seen. And I don't know that that's going to work for us. It may work for someone else, and we may be able to help you find those people. But, there's a lot of knowledge in this, and I think everybody should take advantage of that.
Sure.
Because, if you go to a bank and they've made 10,000 loans, you probably haven't borrowed on 10,000 loans, but they've seen the ones that work. And that's true across the board. So they can give you
that. So really, then I'm going to amend my 3 R's. It's relationship, resources, and then the rationale, right? The rationale behind the decision. So those seem to be the 3 things that you guys drive at. You can help with the rationale and help the client make the decisions. You have the resources to do so, especially being the market leader. And then third, the relationship drives all of these things.
If we could just say there are just 3 things you should remember about non-competes in COVID, what are those 3 big highlight things, like the 3 takeaways? I walk away from here, I want to remember X, Y, and Z.
I'll let David take a crack at the 3 first.
David, why don't you take a crack at the biggest number 1 for you? And Ben, you do the biggest number 1 for you. And then maybe that we can agree on number 3.
I think the biggest one is that we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what the courts will do with this new state of facts. So we can't really necessarily rely on some of the old court judgments and decisions that have come before, because the situation is rapidly evolving, and this is such a fact-specific inquiry that it could change the outcome of some cases. So don't necessarily rely on the outcome that your lawyer told you would be the case a year or 2 years ago, because it's changing so fast.
Gotcha. So I'm going to summarize your statement into an easy takeaway for our listeners. So when it comes to non-competes and our historical experience, the past is prologue. Remember that it's a new day and new age, and you have to evaluate the non-competes in the context of our current circumstances, including COVID-19. I think that's what you said. So that's the big number 1. And I think that's a good theme for COVID non-compete day at Blackletter Podcast. Ben, what's your big number 1? Or if that was your big number 1, what's your number 2?
I would say you really need to have legal help with this. That whether you're an employee looking at that employment contract, don't be so excited about the job that you're just going to pretend that that restrictive covenant isn't there. Get some legal help to see what it means and whether it's reasonable. It's probably not something that you want to try to negotiate with your employer. Virginia's an at-will state, so an employer might either decide not to. There's no penalty on employers in Virginia for withdrawing offers of employment. And so you want to be careful at how you address that and whether it's something you really need to be thinking about. Employers really want to be thinking about drawing those restrictive covenants narrowly wherever they are. One reason you want to talk to an attorney is, regardless of whether you're an employee or an employer, is that jurisdictions handle this issue differently. So in Virginia, if you have a restrictive covenant that is drawn too broadly, either in terms of geography or area or duration, well, that'll X out the whole restrictive covenant. Yeah. Courts will bounce the whole thing. But if you're in Texas, the Texas will have a savings statute that tells a court that says, say that there's a restrictive covenant that says an employee can't do something for a year in a 500-mile geographic area. And courts say, well, 500 miles is extreme, but if it were 100 miles, then that would be a legitimate interest. So the savings statute in Texas will let a court read that restrictive covenant as applying to the 100 miles. And the key thing behind that is that if an employee and employer have agreed on a restrictive covenant and come to a meeting of the minds on 500 miles, then they would have agreed on the 100 miles as well, because it's within that. Savings statute doesn't allow a court or anybody else to read an additional restriction.
What you're saying is that you've got to be strategic. So talk to legal counsel, because not only, as David's statement, his first takeaway is the times modify what we do with non-competes, and it's all very contextual. And your statement is it's also very strategic. So non-competes are contextual in this day and age with COVID, and non-competes are always very strategic, whether it's COVID-19 or before or after COVID-19. You've got to understand that every state has slightly different laws, way they read non-competes, and you can be very strategic about them and do these the right way, whether an employee or an employer, to manage getting out of a non-compete, creating non-competes for your employees, either one. So the two big things are context and strategy. And so I think the third thing that I would add, hearing from you guys, just combining what you've said, the big common sense. And it's almost, sometimes that gets left out of legal arguments. But if you have an employee, I think, in my view, from hearing from you guys, if they haven't taken a lot and there's not a lot of value, don't enforce a non-compete simply because you have the right. Use common sense. You're probably going to spend more money in legal fees than you're ever going to get in business value. If that's not the case and the business value calculus is higher, apply common sense. So apply context, strategy, and common sense to the enforcement of non-competes. In the time of COVID, I think that's what we've got. I think it'll be interesting to see what employers say when we ask them questions about how they think about non-competes right now and what their current knowledge is.
That's all for today's episode of Blackletter. Thanks again for listening. Join us next time when we talk about more Blackletter issues in creative ways. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Google Play so you never miss an episode. And to catch us on video, check out our website at blackletterstudios.com.